So, Palantir is on an absolute epic run. I mean, we were buying just in August for $20 per share, and now we've almost tripled our money in just a few months. But this absolutely begs the question, is this Tesla in 2021 all over again, and we are destined for years of flat or downward trading in regards to Palantir? So, of course, you guys know Wall Street has an opinion on this. So obviously I'm starting to see the downgrades starting to happen for Palantir, and we're going to discuss exactly that. And is Palantir in danger, or is it already in that Tesla 2021 territory where we are going to trade flat or down for years? And unfortunately, I can't say that's impossible because the run has been just crazy to the upside here. So let's discuss that as well. So I'll give you my answer to that question, because in the end, valuation is what matters. That's what kept us all away, and everybody on this channel and in my group and everywhere else, away from buying Tesla at 400 and instead buying in those low 100s instead. So let's talk about that specifically today. Is Palantir in that same situation or not from a valuation perspective? Just make sure you like the video if you like getting the truth without the hype. So guys, I can't lie and say Palantir is not on an epic run. I mean, when a stock goes on this sort of run, it was already on a great run for the year, well before that run ever happened. So when you see that sort of movement up, it really gives us those flashbacks back to Tesla 2021 timeframe, where it just went up, up, up. Everything's to the moon. People making ridiculous price targets, ridiculous predictions all over the place. And so it kind of starting to feel like, are we in that particular situation again? And because Palantir's run up so much so fast, the bears are starting to come out and basically say, hey, this is too much, too fast. We're downgrading the stock. It's not going anywhere for a long time. And a lot of other narratives like that. So let's hear specifically what they have to say. And I'll kind of let you know, is it true? Is it not true? And of course, we'll talk about, are we in a Tesla 2021 type situation with Palantir? And the election chaos sale ends today because we really didn't get any chaos in regards to the election. So if you want to see all those buy and sell alerts like we got in Palantir around the $20 range multiple times this year, obviously SoFi down in the 7s this year, Tesla down in the 140s, and so many other stocks that have doubled up or more over the past year, go ahead and check out the pinned comment down there, because obviously the chaos is over with, so we need to end the sale today. All right, so let's jump in and see what Wall Street's got to say.
I want to bring in Joseph Bonner, Senior Securities Analyst, Technology and Media Communications over at Argus Research. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know we're about to do a deep dive into Palantir. They had results that beat expectations recently, but you've downgraded this stock. So take us through what's behind your view and why you've downgraded it to, I see you've downgraded it to a hold now.
Sure. Good morning, Diane. Let's start with the quarter. They had a great third quarter. They increased they reaccelerated their government, U.S. government revenue 40%. It was 10% in 3Q 23. That's their core market. Their kind of expansion market is the U.S. commercial market. Was up 54% in the quarter. Expanded margins, $1 billion in trailing 12 months cash flow. So doubling that. So they had a great third quarter. My issue with Palantir is that the share price has tripled this year, more than tripled.
Okay, so let's discuss that first point right there. Obviously, he laid out the case for, we've talked about before, the earnings were great. Everything was positive all the way around in regards to the earnings. Now, in regards to a stock tripling in price over the course of a year, from a valuation perspective, that's why valuation is so important, because a stock can triple and still be undervalued. Just the same exact way, a stock can essentially tank 50% and still be overvalued. So I never take into account, well, how much is the stock up this year into my valuation, or whether or not a stock is overvalued or undervalued, because it doesn't freaking matter. Those same folks were doing that same exact thing whenever Palantir first started its run, and it went from $6 up to $18. And it's like, hey, it moved pretty quick in a pretty quick, think about it. We were able to buy, let me back that up a little bit. We were able to buy, I bought shares last year multiple times in the summertime at $7 per share. So in just over a year and a half, I don't know what the return is there, but you're sitting on a, what, 6, 7, 8x, whatever the heck the number is. I'm sorry, I should have done the math ahead of time before I started. I know, I apologize, but we're recording, so let's keep it rolling here. But that is a ridiculous move. Now, I agree with folks saying it's overheated right now, but during a huge chunk of that move, when it just doubled up or tripled up, it wasn't overvalued. That's why I was buying it at $20 just a couple months ago, because to me, that was significantly undervalued from a valuation perspective, despite the fact I had more than doubled up on those shares that I had bought in the $7 range. So that's why that doesn't matter zero. And that's stuff that Wall Streeters like to pull out all the time to give as a reason to get rid of a stock, and why the valuation may be high without actually telling you why the valuation is actually high, because they're not actually doing valuations. They're trading, they're playing all sorts of other games. That's Wall Street's game. So who freaking cares that it doubled up, tripled up, whatever, over the course of the next year? Ask all the NVIDIA shareholders who sold out at that stage after it had doubled and tripled up off its bottom, and how much money, literally fortunes, lost by listening to a narrative like that. So let's see what else this guy got, but so far he has nothing.
So what that means is that Palantir is going to have to grow very fast for quite a while to support that kind of valuation. When you
So he just tied somehow, whether it doubled up or tripled up in a year, to valuation, despite the fact that he didn't actually tie it to anything in regards to valuation. Just stupid.
think about, a high-flying tech stock, we've seen this kind of story a lot of times before. All they have to do is miss a quarter or miss the market's expectation of a quarter, and the stock price gets hit. But putting that aside for the moment, let's think about what they do.
That's literally every stock in the history of the stock market. But all right, whatever. And sometimes, by the way, you like triple beat and raise, and Wall Street still beats you down. So
Palantir makes software to solve very complex data problems. So that's worked great in the defense and intelligence business that they've had with the government. They're now expanding into the commercial market in the U.S. And the question is, how big of a market is there for this kind of software out there? There's a lot of other companies that solve a lot of enterprise business process problems. Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, ServiceNow, and maybe more mundane kind of issues. And the question is, what is really the market for this kind of software that solves these complex problems?
So let me help this guy out a little bit, because I'm not sure he's actually looked at business in the past 30 years, 40 years or so. 40 or 50 years ago, the biggest of the big dogs had complex businesses. You're right. The rest of the businesses were not that complex. Nowadays, everybody's businesses, my small businesses that I couldn't even afford to have Palantir to come out and, take a look at my business. They wouldn't even look at me. The various businesses that I own, they're more complex than businesses were that were giants 40 years ago. So this doesn't hold any weight. And even if Palantir doesn't touch every small business in the world or whatever the case is, every single business in the S&P 500 has complex issues that move beyond the capabilities of the vast majority of solutions out there. So this whole argument just sounds to me like he hasn't really looked at a business or studied how complex business has gotten over the past 40 years. But again, that's not his job at what he does. He's an analyst. His job is to push a narrative that his fun people tell him to push to, essentially aid in whatever the heck they're trying to do in the background there. That's the game that's played by analysts. This is why I completely ignore analysts all the way around.
And Palantir is going to have to kind of prove that there's a consistent market out there for this. So again, they have to support that just really run up in valuation.
And also, if you listen to the earnings call, they have more demand than they can actually meet. And they didn't say unlimited was not the word. I can't remember the word right now, but it is a significant amount of demand, and they can't fill all the demand that's out there for the foreseeable future. So all good signs on our end for those of us that listen to the earnings call and actually paid attention.
So is part of your concern that so a big part of their business is relying on the government, but they've been extending into the commercial business in a greater way. Government business still accounts for more than 50% of its business. Do you have some concern, especially when you think about, there will be a transition in the government, that they could lose some market share there?
Well, they've been doing the government business for 20 years. So the concern is really about consistency. Governments, the government contracts come and go, and working with the government is not always a very consistent practice. You win a contract sometimes, you may not others. It's kind of a hit or miss business.
Again, a very soft narrative there. The contracts that Palantir go after, they usually end up winning, and typically government does not like switching vendors a lot, which is why there's a lot of renewals and a lot of other things going on in those contracts. I'm not even sure there's serious bids in regards to a lot of the contracts that Palantir is going after. I don't know that for sure. Again, somebody please comment down below if you happen to know that. But that was a very broad generalization there. And the government business has always been kind of up and down. But what the government business does is you can lock them into contracts and they will pay you. Now, yes, it's not always consistent pay. I would agree there. So if he's talking about that, I agree. That's why you see these weird quarters where you're just like, wow, why did government revenue dip? They didn't lose any contracts. What's going on there? Well, it just meant the government couldn't get their budget together because our government can't get the budget or pass basic things like a budget, much less a lot of other things. So kind of is what it is on that part of the spectrum. But that's the reason for that business kind of being somewhat up and down quarter to quarter. But in terms of losing business and gaining business back and things of that nature, it's not. You lock them in, and generally speaking, you got a great contract and a great book of business for years in a lot of cases in regards to that. So kind of depends upon which take he was taking. Again, he wasn't specific enough for us to know.
How significant, in your view, is its commercial growth to, just overall growth? We saw that revenue grew across the board 30% for all its metrics. But how important is the commercial business to achieving the valuation at the level that it is now and increasing its valuation?
Sure. The commercial growth market is critical. It's critical to supporting that valuation. Again, they had a great quarter. They're doing fine. The question is, how big of a market is there out there? And you think about, U.S. commercial was 54%. You think about, their international markets outside the U.S., that grew about mid-single digits. Maybe they just haven't tried to exploit that yet.
Yeah, that tells you right there. He didn't listen to the earnings call at all because Alex addressed that specifically, both on the government and you can bleed it over the commercial side. More importantly, you look over across the spectrum. The U.S. is really the one that's come back roaring from an economic perspective. Obviously money's just flowing into American companies. American companies are printing record profits after record profits after record profits. So it makes sense. Where would you target your business? If you have more business than you can take on, where would you target? The folks that have excess money and are seeing outsized growth? Or would you focus more on another area that maybe isn't as robust and doesn't have the same amount of money to spend that Palantir has to spend, and the same rules and the same laws and everything else that kind of all make it much more palatable to spend money on U.S.-based business, or for a U.S. business to spend versus another business in another country where it may not be as easy to do. I don't know. Again, we're back to business 101. It seems like maybe this guy didn't take the course 40 years ago. I don't know.
Those international markets will need to come online at some point. But the real question is how big is the commercial market for this type of software?
Is their premium justified though by its positioning?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I wouldn't have downgraded it if I thought it was justified. Let me put it that way.
Okay. All right. Well, what would it take, in your view, for you to, upgrade it back to a buy rating?
Consistent, rapid growth. 2 quarters, 3 quarters in the future. That's what I'm looking at. It's
a pretty short term there, 2 quarters, 3 quarters in the future, considering for this entire year, they've been knocking quarter after quarter after quarter out of the park, and the growth has accelerated every quarter. I don't know. Maybe it needs more. Who knows?
Is consistent growth for them.
Who are you comparing it to, especially when you think about its PE ratio and in terms of like the valuation that you're paying attention to, Palantir versus others in this space, to reach the premium that you think, kind of justifies the level where it is and where it seems to be, in others' view, headed?
As I mentioned, a lot of their peers, companies like ServiceNow, other enterprise software companies like ServiceNow, Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, companies that have been in this business for many, many years. They are bigger for sure. A lot of them are bigger. Some of them are smaller. But really, their peer group is enterprise software.
Right. And then what would you think in your...
Yes and no, and that's an argument I'm not going to run down the rabbit hole here on, but different people are going to lump in stocks with different categories. I've even seen folks, and I guess this is more in the Tesla world, where they just try to say it's tech. Well, tech's pretty broad. You kind of got to narrow it down a little bit more than that. But I've seen that happen as well, where people want to try to lump things into other categories, other deals. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, especially, it's not 1950 anymore, to where you basically have 5 different core business types. And you could do that anymore. There's so many if, ands, or buts, especially within tech. I mean, gosh, it's kind of like music now. There isn't just a handful of genres. There's literally, 47 different heavy metal genres. It's like, what? How does that even work? Like, I have no idea what any of those words even mean, much less who are the bands within it. So maybe it's an argument like that. I don't know, but I'm not going to run down that rabbit hole here.
Are the challenges or key challenges that Palantir faces in terms of diversifying its client base? Obviously, we've talked about how the government defense sector has been a big part of its client base, but diversifying even its commercial base.
Again, it's this question of are there enough complex problems out there in the commercial market for them to address? I mean, that's really the question. Versus
the answer is yes. Moving on.
Just your online transaction processing, for example. Kind of your bread and butter enterprise software. Are there enough business intelligence problems that you need this kind of software for, that you can't just go to a Microsoft Azure or an SAP to deal with?
All right, we're just going to go ahead and stop the video right there. I can't take any more of the guy there. It just turns into more silliness that's not really helpful to us as investors. So I'm not going to argue with the fact or try to blow smoke up you guys' tailpipe and try to give you and twist myself into knots trying to tell you how Palantir is actually undervalued right now. It's not overvalued. That's simply not true. It is overvalued by every single metric, thought process you can put to it, any sort of growth rate you can put to it. It is overvalued. Now, does that mean that you need to sell a stock just simply because it's overvalued? No, because where does that get you? You should have sold this stock at $25 is what you should have done whenever it got overvalued. When it got up over $30, it was overvalued from a valuation perspective. It was also way in the red, not red, whatever the heck you want to call it, from a trading perspective. All the technicals said it's overbought. It's going to come down. Sell, 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 sell. And now here we are at $57, just a month or so later. So this is where you can't get into that game of, is it overvalued? Do I sell? Do I not? This is why traders lose to long-term investors. This is why traders can't beat the indexes and why dead people beat the indexes and beat the pants off of traders. That's why, dead people. So that's why I stay away from those games. But I got to acknowledge the fact that it is overvalued despite this great quarter, despite the great growth numbers. I'm excited to see where we're going to go next quarter whenever we get next year's guidance for earnings. I'm excited for that, but we are overvalued. Now, the question I've been getting a lot in my group, I've seen it in the comments a little bit too here, is are we approaching that Tesla 2021 type territory where it is just, that was stupid. I said it back then. I got blasted for it. I got destroyed in the comment section. Basically, I'm a bear. I'm the worst person ever, whatever the case was. But I said it's overvalued when it was at $400 and at 1,000 PE, and it's going to trade flat for a period of years. And that is exactly what we're at. We are still not back to those all-time highs, despite this great run that we've gotten in Tesla over the past few weeks. It is still not back to those dizzying highs in 2021. So we did trade flat for years now. So the question is Palantir in that same exact situation? And my answer to that question is a definitive no. It is overvalued, but it is not, we are not even in the ballpark yet of Tesla 2021 overvalued. And more importantly, I haven't really put a definitive what's my new valuation on Palantir yet, because I know next quarter we're going to get next year's guidance. And because the growth has accelerated the past couple of quarters, and I believe it's going to accelerate again in the third quarter or this last quarter here of the year, I'm interested to see, we're already at that 30% growth rate that Alex promised us a long time ago. It started off the year at 20 or a little bit below 20. We got up over that. We're up over 30 now. What is he going to guide to next year? Because that right there will give me an idea as to how overvalued we are. Or is there something else, another rabbit to pull out of the hat per se, and create another valuation reset to the upside in regards to Palantir? I think we're going to get some sort of a reset, but the question is how much? Then I can tell you what my new valuation will be, and are we overvalued or undervalued over the next year in regards to that. So I got to wait for that. But in regards to, is it overvalued like Tesla was in 2021? No, it is not. We got a lot more running to do before we reach those levels, a lot more running to do. So for me right now, it's simply a hold. I'm enjoying the run. This is why you buy whenever you get opportunities. You've had almost 3 years now to buy the stock somewhere under $20. And in most of that time, a year and a half of that time, under $10. So we've had lots of time to add shares. Obviously, we've been loading the boat the entire time. I have way more Palantir than I ever planned on owning, but that's what happens when great stocks continue to perform quarter in and quarter out and Wall Street gets dumb. You just keep adding to great companies because I know that is easy money over the long run. Now, no, I did not expect this sort of run into this year. I did not expect a year and a half later to, be on a 5 or 6x or whatever the heck the number is from that $7 range. No expectation of that. But that's what a prepared investor does. My job is not to guess when that's going to happen. My job is not to guess whenever Wall Street's going to beat it down. My job is not to guess whenever Wall Street's going to run it up and how far they're going to run it up. My job is just to buy a great company at a fair price. And if Wall Street wants to get dumb, buy more of that company. That's it. That's my only job. That is how you make fortunes in the stock market. And that's exactly what we did. And if you want to learn exactly how to do that, how to do valuations, want to see when we buy, how to buy, what happens when your stock goes on a run, get free coaching, take 5 courses for free, be able to be a part of the best 6, 7, and 8-figure Discord where those members are all helping you out as well. Do that. See all my buy and sell alerts in real time, see my complete watch list with price targets and so much more. Take advantage of the election chaos flash sale because it ends because we had no chaos. So gonna end it today. So make sure you take advantage, get your membership before that price goes back up. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market. And click here to see my exact plan for this market. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.